players, past legends. Past legends.
And welcome back to our past players and past legends. Today we've certainly got one of Adelaide's finest past players and past legends, Mark Bickley.
Welcome, Bix. Now, casual 272 games for Adelaide. Runner-up the BNF in 93, 30 92. Model of consistency, 10 in the top 10 in the BNF in your 11 out of your 13 seasons. 53 games also for South Adelaide. So, well, of course, South Australian Football Hall of Fame, but we'll cover all that a bit later. Welcome aboard, Bix.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. How are you?
Great, thanks, mate. Let's go back to the start. Playing in Port Pirie.
Yeah, look, it was a great breeding ground for me, sort of growing up there, and my family was heavily involved in the footy club. You know, Dad had coached, and Mum was involved on all the various committees that families often did, and so pretty much my earliest memories are kicking around at the footy club and going to training and watching training. So there wasn't sort of many days of the week in footy season where, you know, I didn't have a footy in my hand or, you know, getting there early at training with the older blokes and having a kick with them. So, you know, the old adage about, you know, having a footy in your hand all the time and kicking it and that sort of 10,000 hours of mastery, I'm certain that had sort of something to do with, you know, having that great feel for the footy and always wanting to get your hands on it.
Of course, Bix, too. So you played, you know, at Solomon Town, then ventured down to North Adelaide. Give us a view what thoughts back then for a couple of that.
Yeah, so I started playing senior footy in the country when I was 16. So I had a couple of seasons in Pirie and I guess caught the attention of North Adelaide, who we were zoned to at the time. So, and of course, North were really strong. You know, they played, I think, 87, you know, they were in the grand final and Nick Noonan and, you know, all the Jarman brothers and those great players, David Wildy. And so after a couple of seasons in the country, I came down and trained with North for a little while, but sort of played one or two trial matches, but didn't really fit the mould that sort of Nick Noonan was sort of looking for. And, you know, they're highly skilled, you know, beautiful kick and all that sort of stuff. And he basically said, probably you're better off looking elsewhere. So I sort of went back to Port Pirie after doing the pre-season with North Adelaide. A little bit disappointed, but probably because of that sort of extra fitness and doing that pre-season with North, had a really good year that year and won the association.
Yep.
Yeah, the Madigan medal it was in Port Pirie. So I think I was 18 or 19 at the time. So at that stage, South Adelaide was being coached by John Reid. John Reid had coached in the SGL competition where I was playing, so still had a lot of contacts in Port Pirie and Port Augusta. And they said, you need to have a look at this young bloke in Port Pirie, and South Adelaide were at the opposite end of the scale to North. I think in 1988 that only won one game.
Yep.
They weren't all that financial, so they said to me, look, come down, we can't pay you a whole lot, but we'll help you find a job and get you sorted out with a place to live. So I came down with another Port Pirie player called Mark Aldridge, who was a great mate of mine as well, and we sort of moved in together and so sort of played in that first year in 1989 at South and fortunately was able to sort of work my way into the first, you know, right from the start and stayed in there all year, which was nice.
You only played 2 years at South, but 53 games, so you certainly played, obviously, virtually every game.
Yeah, did miss a game there. I played the first 3 games in 91 as well. So when the Crows were formed, I missed out on making the side and then played the first 3 games in 91, which incidentally, South sort of ventured back into the finals that year. And because I played the first 3 games, I qualified. So I played 2 finals, but unfortunately they were both sort of losing finals and I hardly got a kick. So that wasn't a great thing for South or me for that matter. I wasn't able to come back and play as well as I would have liked. And that was the year, of course, the bloodbath grand final. And Daryl Hart kicked 7 or 8 goals, I think it was, and North won another flag.
And obviously being at South Adelaide there and John Reid being your coach it certainly helped tickle things over with the Crows as well?
Yeah, look, initially Reedy wasn't a huge rap for the Crows, as I think a lot of the Sandford coaches weren't, because when the Crows came in, they were a composite side. They decimated a lot of the teams, and also the mechanism between sort of when you didn't get picked for Adelaide, you'd go back and train on a Thursday night, play on the weekend, but then you'd go back to Adelaide and train sort of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So it wasn't an ideal setup. So initially, a lot of the coaches, Neil Craig was a coach. He made it quite difficult for some of the Norwood players. I don't think they were overly wrapped with that system. But I guess later on, I think it was 1995, after John had finished coaching and had a bit of a stint in the media and doing some commentary, he found his way to the Adelaide Footy Club as the footy manager, and he was brilliant in that role. He had a great footy knowledge. He, he's pretty tough with the players, which at that stage I think we needed in terms of keeping us sort of focused on what we needed to be focused on. There's a lot of distractions, as when we first come into the competition. That was, a really great role for John, and he's been a constant throughout my career, really. Attracting me to Adelaide. Then through those sort of really pivotal years, where we had success at Adelaide, he played a major role in it, and then obviously he's still involved with the club now, and he's a great friend.
Still with the SNFL and South Adelaide, growing up in that late 80s, who were some of the teams and players that you got to play against that you just stood back in awe and said, wow, I'm on the ground with these guys? Yeah,
well when I grew up in Port Pirie, and I was a massive Port Adelaide fan, if you can believe that. And, Russell Ebert was my hero. And so when we played Port Adelaide, they were really strong in 89 and 90. And, Scott Hodges was at the absolute peak of his powers. And I think we played South 2 or 3 times in that year, and he had an unbelievable year. And I think he might have kicked 10 and 12 and 8. That's the year that he dominated and kicked 150 goals. Yeah. So he was, at his top, he was just such a physical specimen. He was big. He was powerful. He could kick it a mile. Aerially, he was great. And of course, Port were a good team as well. And, they were hard and tough, and they got to him quickly. And so, he was a great player, but also, in those early years, playing against Glenelg, and I played on Kim Hodgman, who was just coming back on the other side of, being at North Melbourne, Peter Carey, some of those all-time star players. My mum barracked for Glenelg, so she was always following those, Glenelg pretty closely. So to play on the back end and play against those guys was amazing. Chris McDermott, of course, and some of those great Glenelg players that, came through and had some success in 85, 86. So they were still playing. And blokes like Bruce Lindsay, who was just such a South Australian champion. Michael Aish was another one. All those players, they were probably 30, 31 in their careers. So 10 years earlier, when I was a 11 or 12-year-old, they were sort of dominating at SANFL level and playing state footy and all those things. So yeah, it was a great competition, and really thankful that I got an opportunity to play at that level before. The AFL came in and sort of put its mark on South Australian footy.
Now, Bix, footy folklore that you got the last list spot at Adelaide, the 52nd spot. Is there any truth in the rumour that there was a long run, 10K or so run, you guys did it, got back and timed run and all that, and then Cornsey went, right, go again, and you actually were the only person who betted your time, and that really helped get the last spot, basically your attitude?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I can remember the training session, and there might be something in that. And maybe it was because I finished towards the back of the group in the first run, so maybe my time wasn't as sharp as some of the others. But there was a brutal first couple of years under Graham. Like, his mentality was around. The Victorians think they're better. If they're doing 10K run, we'll do 2. If they're doing, we heard Carlton did 100 metre sprint, so we did 110. We always did more, and so it was always sort of challenging. It's not just physically, but mentally, to be able to. He basically said, "Okay, boys, we've had a big night. You've left it all on the track. How would you feel if I said we're going to do that 10K run again? Do you think you'd be able to do it?" And some people said no, and he said, I'm sure you'd be able to do it. In actual fact, we're going to do it just so I can prove it to you that you can do it. So that's what we did. And there was some disbelief, and there was some blokes that didn't finish it the second time, but most of them did. And probably at the time that's what was needed, because there was a bit of an inferiority complex, particularly amongst younger guys. You know, you can imagine, we talk about Michael Aish and Bruce Lindsay being legends. Well, you know, we'd only seen blokes like Dermot Burton and Jason Dunstall and Tony Lockett on TV. You'd never, you know, dream that you're going to be playing against them, you know, in 6 months' time. So we just needed to make sure that physically we were ready. And I guess initially we probably didn't challenge, you know, some of those big teams with some of those star players, you know, consistently. But over time, and, you know, when we realised that, you know, we were good enough and we did have what it takes, and then mentally we're able to do it consistently and get some good results.
I think a part of that too was back then you played at Windy Hill, Victoria Park, Moorabbin. You know, I think that played a fairly big part. Now, Bix, you debuted against Essendon at Windy Hill?
Yeah, that's right. It was a game. It was actually the Crows' first game in Melbourne, because I think we played round 1 was Hawthorn, was a win. Round 2 was Sydney. Round 3 was back to so back. I think Sydney, then Carlton, then round 4 was our first game in Melbourne against Essendon, and it was blowing a gale, and Kevin Sheedy famously had tied down the windsock so that we wouldn't be able to work out, you know, which way the wind was blowing, and we had. There's this great story with Neil Curley where we got to the ground and we were ushered to, you know, Knuckles is at the front. He was the team manager, and he said, "Where's our change rooms?" And they sort of took us through sort of under the grandstand to these rooms. And North Melbourne were playing the reserves game before us against Essendon, and we were using the same change rooms. And they were very sort of primitive, just like a sandful change room, you know, big square room with, you know, 40 hooks on the wall. And all the North Melbourne players had, you know, their bag in front of a hook with all with their clothes hanging on the hook with their shoes tucked underneath. And Curls walked in and they said, "Here's your room." And he said, "Well, North Melbourne, they've got all these clothes in there." He said, "No, you're sharing it with them." So Neil said, "Bloody bullshit, we're sharing it." And he literally just walked around and grabbed everyone's clothes, everyone's shoes, everyone's bag, and threw it up into a corner. So there was this massive pile of everything in the corner. And he said, "Okay, boys, grab yourself a hook. This is our room now." And as we were running out to go onto the ground, so North Melbourne was sort of waiting for us to come out of the room. And as we were sort of going in the race, you could hear North Melbourne saying, "What the hell?" You know, they'd walked into the room and all there was all of their clothes were in this giant pile in the corner of the room, just stacked in a heap. So I'm not sure how that went down, but sort of we were out on the oval, so we didn't have to deal with that. But that was New's mentality. He was very combative, and he thought that we deserved our own change rooms, and you know, people had paid their money to come watch, you know, the main game, which was Adelaide v Essendon, not to watch the North Melbourne reserve. So he had no qualms at all, but just throwing all their stuff to one side.
Well, this is the second story we've heard about Knuckles getting rid of the reserves' clothes and bags. We had a story from Victoria Park where he decided to throw the bags out of the door for you guys. So maybe he's done more work instead of the coaching box. He was ushering more and more players' gear out of the door. Done well.
No, look, Neil was great to have around the place, and you know, obviously, you know, with his passing, you know, it does make you appreciate. You hear all the great stories, and just to have shared a year with him as the team manager, and you know, a great story that I can remember was he was the bloke who told me I was in the team basically for my first game. So I got the training early, and Neil came in and said, "I need to see you in my office." So I went into his office on a Wednesday night, and he said, "Son, you're going to be playing on the weekend." And I was thinking, "Oh my God, this is great." So Graham didn't tell me; it was Neil that told me.
Is it true you didn't have a contract?
Yeah, that's right. And so obviously, as you mentioned, I was one of the last ones picked, and there were 6 of us. They ran out of money basically when they were giving everyone contracts. So there were 6 of us who they basically said, "You're on the list, but we can't actually pay you. So you'll have to, unless you play a game, you won't earn any money this year."
Task was one as well.
Task was one, yes.
Yes, we've already had Task on the show.
Task was another one. And so he said, "Come into my office." And I went into his office and said, "You're playing on the weekend now. You've got to sign this. It's a contract, and you haven't got a contract yet." So, in my head, I can remember thinking to myself, there's rule 101, never sign anything you haven't read. And I remember getting up the courage to say to Neil, I said, Neil, I don't have a manager. Do I need to get someone to have a look at it before I sign it? He said, son, I don't care who reads it. It ain't changing. And if you don't sign it, you're not playing. I said, okay, I'll sign it. And so I just signed it and pushed it back across the desk. So and he had a bit of a chuckle and away we went. So, I guess, once again, we had at different times, we wondered whether we would be able to compete strongly on the big stage. But he's one of these people who he makes you walk a bit taller, and he just oozes self-confidence. So to have him involved early on and to reassure and talk to us about what we needed to do and assist Graham, I think was a huge thing for the footy club.
Now, Bix, to give everyone a bit more of an education here, was it the era where you worked? Now, you were working as a Sparky, apprentice Sparky at Mitsubishi. There were some incredible stories with your shift times and all that, what you did and had to go back and forth. Give everyone a bit of an education there, Bix.
Yeah, so when I came down to Adelaide, I was a third-year apprentice at the lead smelter in Port Pirie. So one of the things that South Adelaide were able to do was organise for me to get my indentures transferred to Mitsubishi, which in the old days when we trained at Panther Park was directly opposite across the road. So we did that, and so for the first year, that was fine. Then I finished my apprenticeship, and initially I was just working day shift. But then when the Crows formed, and it sort of unfortunately coincided with this, we had this one or two guys who were really happy to work night shift and afternoon shift, and they both left the job at Mitsubishi, which meant that we had to go on this rotating roster. So we all had a couple of turns of doing afternoon shift and night shift, and that made it really difficult to get to training. So I went and saw my boss, and basically he allowed me to sort of have some time off to go to training when I was working afternoon shift. But I had to make the time up, basically. So the normal shift for an afternoon shift, you start at 4 and work till 12:30 a.m. But because I'd leave Mitsubishi at 4:30 to get to Footy Park by 5, we'd start training probably around 5:30, go for 2.5, 3 hours, get back to Mitsubishi by about 8 or 8:30. So I was having 4 hours off of work, so I had to come in 4 hours early. So effectively, I'd start at midday, do 4.5 hours, go to footy training, get back at 8:30, 9 o'clock, work through till 12:30 at night. Get home, have a bite to eat, get to bed by about 1 o'clock, sleep, get up, go to work. So that was sort of 2-week lots. Now, during the year, it was, during playing season, it wasn't too bad. But pre-season, it was just brutal because you're training so hard. And then the night shift. I hadn't worked a lot of night shift. They'd sort of shielded me a little bit from that. But I remember, and this was the end of my my sort of electrician career, was when it was round 1 of 1993, and this is a pretty famous game because it was Tony Modra came in as a late sort of inclusion after Scott Hodges sort of pulled a hamstring or had hamstring tightness after the last training session. So that was a Sunday game at the MCG. Mods ended up kicking 10 goals. We had a great win against Richmond. So we flew back into Adelaide that night. I think the plane landed around 9 or 9:30. So by the time I get home, it's sort of 10:15. So my shift started at 12:30 a.m. and I had to work through till around, I think it was 7 or 7:30 the next morning. So played a game of footy, hadn't had any sleep or anything like that. So you go into work and you've got a few things that you have to make sure that you have to do. Really the night shift is around making sure the ovens and all those things start on time so that when the production line's ready to go, everything's up to speed and up to heat and all this sort of stuff. But also while you're there, you also do a bit of other sort of general wiring. And I remember I started sort of doing this wiring and I was getting a bit sleepy because it was probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're working on your own, which isn't great. So you're not allowed to work on live wires. So you're doing, these big panels that are yet to be commissioned. So I started doing that, and then I sort of all of a sudden just woke up. I'd actually fallen asleep, and where I was working, whilst that cabinet wasn't live, the one next to it was, and I'd sort of fallen into the other cabinet and fallen very close to a whole heap of live wires, which is incredibly dangerous. And I remember thinking to myself, if I had have rolled over whilst I was asleep and rolled onto these high voltage wires, I would have been just fried, and it would have been 4 hours before anyone found me. So at that stage, I said to myself, look, footy's getting more and more serious. I just can't be doing these crazy shifts and trying to sort of work really hard and also getting the best out of myself playing footy. So I went to the boss and said, no, this is what happened and it's too dangerous and we can't do it, and found myself another profession. So I went and worked with SA Brewing for a little while. Wayne Jackson was the CEO. Nigel Smart had been working there for a little bit, so they organised the job for me there. So I became one of the toughest jobs in South Australia at the time, selling West End Draft, and it was about the only beer you could buy.
Fair enough. Mate, in 93, you runner-up best and fairest. That's a fair effort after only being in the AFL for a couple of years. You'd be pretty chuffed about that.
Yeah, it was. Like the first year was really about just establishing myself, and I was lucky I came in and played, came in round 4 and played every game after that. Then in 92, which was, a really good season for me again, I think I might have finished third in the best and fairest in my second season, which was good, and then finished one better and second in 1993. And we had a great year that year, and it's probably, when I look back, it's probably my sort of best year at footy club. Tony McGuinness, who was a star, he won the best and fairest. I think he won it quite comfortably, but, we had, some great players that year, and of course went sort of deep into the finals, and but for a couple of kicks could have played in the grand final. So I guess that was good. And then pretty much after that, I just had a wretched run with injuries for 2 or 3 years after that. And the club had a wretched run as well with changing of coaches and that before Blighty came. So it was 93 was a great year. Like I said, McDermott, McGuinness, they were great players. It was the emergence of Sean Wren, it was this sort of blend of old and new. So, Mark Rasciuto made his debut that year. So there's lots of great sort of older players who were still sort of in really good form. And then we had this new wave, Nigel Smart, Ben Hart, Mark Rasciuto all coming through. So, we were, when you look back, that side, more than capable of, going all the way, but unfortunately weren't able to do it.
Yeah, look, and I know there's a bit of footy folklore of you breaking wind in the bloody second in the game against Essendon. I've always found that quite bizarre and ridiculous. Let's go back to the game against Carlton where we kicked poorly for goal. Let's be honest, you were an unusual matchup for Craig Bradley. And that game, I think Carlton, we butched it. Let's go to the Essendon game. We were 7 up at halftime. Unfortunately, Sean Wren missed an easy one just before halftime, and then Jars missed one of the goal square in the third quarter. Now that's a tad more important and a bit more relevant to the result than someone etc.
Yeah, look, I think the other one is more the comedic value.
Yeah.
But you're right, and it's funny because I think after that game, consciously or subconsciously, a lot of us, I'll speak to myself personally, I thought to myself, as disappointed as we were sort of missing out on going into the grand final after the Essendon game, the overwhelming thing was, well, guess what? Next year we'll be back and I'll be better and Nigel will be better and Ren and Shudo and Hart and all these great players. We're going to do this. But you just never know what fate is going to hold, and so when you do look at that game, like I said, Essendon were just coming a bit, and then we got that sort of opportunity with Jars in front of goal, and I think we're still 5 goals in front, and you think if you kick one there, you're just steady, and all of a sudden it's back to 6 goals again, or it's back to 5 goals, or whatever the margin was, and it's just enough to calm everyone's nerves. I think what happened, you get a miss and everyone's sort of shoulders slump a bit. They get a kick in, and then I think they went down, and within the next minute they got another goal, and that the crowd started sort of growing, and all those sort of things happened. So, and I guess the irony of all of it is, Andrew Jarman in all my time, like his brother Darren, he's just the most skillful, wonderful player, that you've ever seen. And, I reckon today he could kick that goal, like he just, I'm not sure, sometimes it's a he misses that 1 in 1,000, I reckon, and it just happened to be.
He might have missed one for Gazer in an important moment of a prelim final against
Really?
Uni, and because it may have been the person speaking to you at the moment kept yelling at him, Jars, remember remember the kick against Essendon, and after he's missed, he's turned around and he's told me where to go forward and multiply.
I can imagine, yeah. But that sort of if buts and candy nuts, isn't it? And unfortunately, that was what happened. There was other stuff around, Scott Hodges coming off the ground when many thought he should have been on the ground.
Yep.
There's lots of, and that's what happens when you lose. You magnify every decision that's made, every handball that's missed, every kick that's missed, and I think that's what's been happening. And when we think about success in '98, you talk to Wayne Carey, and he'll tell you that he should have won the Norm Smith playing for Adelaide because he kicked 5 goals for us. So every North Melbourne supporter rues, the things that they did wrong. But Essendon, they were a phenomenal team. I think when you look back, the Baby Bombers, I think they had a huge number.
And Michael Long was unbelievable.
He tore that game apart, didn't he?
Yeah. Once again, I might have spent a bit of time on him as well. So how was I going? After having a great year, I played on probably the best player for the opposition.
Should have called for a motorbike.
Should have called for something. Yeah, but that's what happens. To be able to, particularly when you get to the pointy end, those teams are full of great players. Michael Long, Tim Watson in his comeback. Buick was a dynamo. James Hurd was sort of making his way. Joe Mercedes, Mark Mercury. There's just Jason Johnson. All those, they had this unbelievable crop who, of course, went on and formed the huge basis of that team, that great team in 2000, which went through and only lost 1 game for the year. So, they'll be measured as a really good team. Matthew Lloyd, was another one.
Young Fletcher.
Dustin Fletcher, yeah. So, we'll probably name, 5 or 6, Hall of Famers out of that group. So, they're a formidable outfit. But as I said, from that moment, after that, Graham Corns, I got injured in round 4 of that year. I broke my foot and really didn't play much of a role.
You only played 11 games for the year. Yep.
Yeah, but I think I played the first 3, missed maybe 10 and then came back, and it really wasn't right after that. So, and then unfortunately that was Graham Corns' last year, remarkably. He had 1 bad season after making the prelim and he was out. There was a feeling that we needed a Victorian coach, and then Robert Shaw came in and that really didn't work. So 95 and 96 were, disappointing years where we missed the finals again. So, in pretty short space of time, you go from being a youngster coming through and playing in a prelim final and being, a kick away from a grand final in 93 as a 22 or 23-year-old, and then all of a sudden you're 27 and you're thinking, is this ever going to happen? So, that's probably that sort of sense or feeling we had, after Robert Shaw left and Malcolm Blight arrived. That,
Can you give us a bit more on the Robert?
Yeah, well, that was
Robert
you were
Shaw
leading me into that a little bit. I was going to ask, obviously, Graham Corns obviously being your first coach, but why didn't Robert Shaw quite work out at the Adelaide Footy Club?
Even just a bit more balance, because I think we just bagged the crap out of him as
because he's
Victorian,
Victorian,
look, I think there was high expectation, and I thought he had a lot of expectation on himself as well, and so it just didn't quite work the way he would like. I think when he was coaching Fitzroy, he was able to extract every little bit out of those players, and even if they didn't win, they went close and people really respected them. But then once the consensus was, well, you've now got a good team, you've got a good bunch of players that can play. Let's see you do the same with them and make finals. And it just didn't work. He just didn't quite sort of gel with the players. He he had lots of different tactics that were confusing at times. He never really settled on one way of playing, and that sort of didn't help us.
Ironically,
So one
that's
thing
exactly what Sean Tasker virtually said as well, where Tas said you'd start with one thing. If it wasn't working, a quarter later he'd change 180 degrees.
Yeah, that's it. But the one thing that is probably overlooked with Robert Shaw is the basis, or a lot of the group of players who ended up playing and being successful in the late 90s really sort of were blooded by Robert Shaw. He traded quite extensively as well. So, for example, Andrew McLeod, Tyson Edwards both debuted in 95. Kane Johnson debuted during that, or was drafted during that period. They traded to get Darren Jarman back. They traded to get Kim Costa back. They traded to get Shane Ellen and also Peter Caven. So there's a whole sort of group of players who we got away from just being South Australians, I guess. We were able to, like Shane Ellen and Peter Caven were Victorian guys, and Stanfield was another one, Barry Stanfield. And so, he just took a broader view of, what, we can't just limit ourselves to taking South Australians in the draft and trying to bring South Australians who are in Victoria back home. We have to actually cast our net a little bit wider. So they did that, and I think, we sort of bore the benefits of that a little bit later on. So if anyone, sort of is looking for a legacy, I think that will be part of what Robert Shaw sort of left to the footy club. And he gave Malcolm Blight, a group of players who were capable and that had been sort of put together but never really gelled or got the sort of maximum out of themselves, but were primed and ready to go.
Was Matty Robin a part of that trade as well during that period?
Matty, I think
earlier on.
A little bit
earlier.
Okay, fair enough, yeah.
He was there in 93, I think.
Yep. Yeah, so he's in Hawthorn's start 91, then he played 92, then came back in 93. Right. Broke his leg in 93.
That's right.
Against Sydney, which was vital. Yeah.
And moving on, obviously, to Malcolm Blight, he would have brought a pretty fresh perspective, obviously, coming over from Geelong.
Blighty being Blighty.
Yeah, Blighty being Blighty.
Yeah. I think from the players' point of view, it was really, there was, players that weren't happy with Graham Corns. There were players that weren't happy with Robert Shaw for all, wide and varied reasons. And, of course, when you're not winning, of course, people aren't happy. Footy clubs aren't a great place to be at when you're not winning. And so there's a million different reasons. And so when sort of Malcolm was appointed and what actually happened was you sort of thought to yourself, well, we're not going to say, this bloke's no good because he actually knows what he's doing. We'd seen him take Geelong to 3 grand finals and, consistently finish at the top of the ladder. You'd hear him speak on, he'd been commentating for a couple of years and, he just spoke so much sense. And so it really was, we've run out of excuses. We can't keep blaming the coach if it doesn't work. This bloke knows what he's doing. If it doesn't happen now, it's clearly us. And so there was that sense of an onus. And also, of course, a lot of players sort of came to the end of their career at sort of the arrival of Blighty. Chris and Tony and Andrew Jarman were all sort of
Greg Anderson
30 or above, and that had sort of varied reasons why that they, weren't going to continue on. And Weed was at the end of his career. Greg Anderson was just about done as well. So we've probably lost, there's 5 or 6 or 7 guys, in that 30 age bracket. So what it did, it just forced that sort of next group of players to say, well, this is our team now and we'll take ownership of it. And like I say, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen on the back of our performance and the standards that we set. So that was pretty much where our mindset was. And, it ended up working really well in terms of spreading the load. We ended up, we had some, really star players, but, pretty even contributions, across the board when you look at it. And, from such a wide group of, really, really solid players.
I think you sort of covered my next question or point a little bit earlier on, where we all analyse so much and and all that. And it's when you win, you think back 97 with probably the game being switched after Lady Di, passing away, start late. You had the Lee Colbert mark not paid, the Libber goal. not given.
Yeah.
Everything sort of seemed to fall our way, and to quote the great man John Griffin, Griff as well, obviously from South. Griff's favourite line: "There's a fine line between pleasure and pain," and it just nailed that really. When you think of '97, where just everything fell the right way, and you think, even what did we kick? Was it 12-1 after half time?
Yeah, that's right. 14-1.
14-1. Sorry, yeah.
And was the training ramped up during that period, or just prior to that period? With Neil Craig, yeah.
Well, I think we were pretty fit all year, but there was definitely just a little bit of loading in the sort of lead up to the finals. But you make a great point. Like, the way I describe it is the planets have to align for you to win a premiership, and the remarkable part is pretty much from that sort of from 98 forward, it's been the opposite. Every time Adelaide have looked like winning, something that like that, Andrew McLeod getting, an infection in his foot, Mark Rashudo getting suspended, parvovirus, like then there's, a million different things. There was, late umpiring decisions and all a whole range of different things, So it just proves the point. You do need everything to go your way. You need to have all the planets aligning, and that's what it was like in the build-up. It's also like that in the game. You like you said, 14-1 and some unbelievable goals, and Shane Allen kicking 5, and all those things. We beat North Melbourne the year after. North Melbourne kicked 8 goals, 22, kicked 2 goals, 11 in the second quarter.
Yeah.
All these things, fall your way, and so. As prepared as you can be and as well as you play and all of that, you still need an element of luck. And the other thing that I look back on 97 and 98, and sometimes it gets a little bit lost. People look at the team and they say, oh, what an amazing team. Had Simon Goodwin in it, and it had Tyson Edwards in it. And,
they were kids.
But they'd only played under 50 games.
Yeah, they literally,
Grand final was Goody's 10th game.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10th game, and, played amazingly. And Tyson, had been up and down a little bit, but got in there and was just rock solid and so sure with every time he touched the ball. And I think that's the thing. We didn't know it at the time, and we were sort of a bit of an unknown quantity. But when you look at that, Edwards, 300-game superstar. Goodwin goes on to be, I think he was a 5-time All-Australian, great player. Rashudo goes on to be an 8-time All-Australian, and Rennie was just phenomenal player. Ben Hart, unbelievable, and one of the all-time great defenders. And so, Kane Johnson ended up, being club captain at Richmond, and he was the only teenager in that grand final in the first year. So he went on to have a long and decorated career as well. So at the time, you had 5 or 6 youngsters, and you thought, well, are they going to stand up? Well, those young players ended up going on to be superstars of the game. So that's probably one of the things we didn't know at the time, and we thought how unbelievable it was. But when history goes back and has a look at it, we'll say, well, you know what, they were pretty handy players in the end, the way they turned out. Because and you look through that. I didn't mention Darren Jarman, but and talk about AFL Hall of Fame, you've got, I think, Nigel Smart, Ben Hart, Darren Jarman, Mark Rashudo, Simon Goodwin,
Mark
Bickley.
and
Andrew McLeod.
Yeah, Andrew McLeod, of course. But, Tyson Edwards must get in there one day, and there might be one or two others, I don't know. But that's a pretty amazing strike rate when you think about how many of, where all those players come from and how they got put together. It's probably no surprise. It's a bit of a chicken and the egg. When you have success, I think that helps you get those accolades.
And, of course, Aaron Keating and Brett James played in 2 premierships a week. And, geez, and Keats certainly dominated off ground. Don't worry about on ground, but, geez, he dominated where it counted off the ground.
So it's just a memorable time, isn't it? And it's part of South Australian footy folklore, and it just captured the imagination of our community at that time when we, were predominantly, Port Adelaide were in their first year, but for so many and for so long, and had been that sort of almost like that state representative side.
So you'd been at the top of the mountain 2 years in a row in 97, 98. 99, it sort of fell apart a little bit. Is it a matter of you guys were just cooked?
Absolutely.
Sean Wren getting injured. You ever look too, for whatever we say about Robert Shaw, he's nice and unlucky he didn't have Sean Wren. Sean Wren comes back, 97, 98, we win 2 flags. does his knee on the plate at Footy Park and at 99 at the start of the year, and guess what? We bomb again. I know that's being too simplistic, but I still say overall it's a personal opinion. Sean Wren might be our best player, but I still think he's been the most important player in Adelaide Footy Club's history.
Agreed.
Yeah, well, no doubt. He's such a barometer to our team, but I think like we trained so hard under Craigie, and Blighty was a hard taskmaster, and he wanted us to get back to that same fitness level. And the other thing that happened, Rennie did his knee, but I think that year we had 7 guys have groin operations, and we had blokes with stress fractures. And when you play, a month of finals 2 years in a row, you're effectively playing 9 or 10 extra games.
High intensity too.
Yeah, and so for those 2 years, you end up playing 50 games. If you just bomb out in the finals, you might play 41 or something. So if you bomb out before the finals, so there's that extra intensity, and we did train really hard, and there were high standards. So it literally all just caught up with us, and we had a lot of these cumulative type injuries that just robbed us of our good players. And then of course the other thing that happens when predominantly you're playing finals and you're a good team and you're playing the same players each round for 2 years, you don't introduce a whole lot of new players, and you don't get great draft picks because you're sort of down the back of the draft. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't really have a whole heap sort of coming through. We had Matthew Clark and Nathan Bassett and Tyson Stengline and a few of those guys who were just outside the team. But other than that, we had a lot of youngsters who were untried and didn't really end up sort of amounting to some of that sort of star quality that we had in those previous years.
Of course, talking of injuries, yourself with over in Ireland breaking your leg with a Gaelic footy.
Yeah, not ideal. In the end, it didn't cost me. That was in 2002, and Charlie Walsh was fabulous. He got me onto a bike riding program, and I had a special boot where I was able to ride. And I was actually as fit as any other year in my career. It was my last year. So I did it in October 2002. My last year was 2003, and it was as good a year as I'd had, as in terms of, I think I might have finished 4th or 5th in the best and fairest, and pretty much once I got the mobility back in my leg after sort of getting the plastic cast off or the moon boot off, and sort of being able to run within a month, I was running personal best time. So that was all down to Charlie's conditioning work that he did, and having this desire to want to make sure that I knew it was going to be my last year to finish on a pretty good note. And we got to the finals, and we ended up running into Brisbane in a knockout final, and that was just a bridge too far, unfortunately.
Yeah, one thing obviously in your career, there's the Darryl Wakeland incident, and I think too, this is again a personal opinion. It's probably it's a hard one for you to comment on, Bix, but I think if a player makes a mistake once in their career, that's what it sort of should be accepted as. If it's a person who consistently does that, like, let's be honest, the number 18 centre forward at Port Adelaide for a while and Port Magpies. If it's something like that, then the player, and like Barmy admits he's got to wear it of things he did in his career. But you made a mistake. Yes, it was a serious error, but it's once. It's not like Mark Bickley should not be remembered as a so-called mongrel. Yes, Mark Bickley, hard at it, honest, gave everything, huge commitment, left nothing on the track. That's my vision of Mark Bickley.
And it was a spur of the moment thing too. That's the other thing. You can't hold it against somebody for that. Exactly right.
Yeah, you're right. But everything you do, you have to be accountable for. And exactly like you're saying, it's something I look back on. And whilst people say, have you got any regrets? The regret is Darryl getting hurt, obviously, and doing that. But at the same time, it shapes you as a person, and it changes your perspective around head high injuries and all that sort of stuff. I was devastated after that, unfortunately. And look, and in the end, you like people still go shopping and people yell out to me and say stuff about that, and it is what it is. It's just something that you have to deal with, and it's I feel worse. For Darryl, he's the one that's got to deal with it as well, and he had no fault of his own. He didn't choose for that to happen to him either. So,
top bloke too,
but in the end, a ripping person. But I think for me, and part of the way I played. You know, you mentioned the word mongrel. That was part of what I brought to the table. You know, you talk about unsociable hawks. Well, the way footy was played, you know, in the mid to late 90s, everyone was unsociable. You know, like so. It was a brutal game. It was different to what it is now. There was much more physicality, and you actually could go out and look to hurt people. You know, there was no, if you, you know, we talk about the sling tackle now. If you tackled someone and smashed them into the turf and knocked them out, that was a great.
It was a badge of honour.
Exactly, because they were one short. And similarly, if someone was running and chasing and you could bump them in a shepherd and hurt them, you know, that was part of the course. And I think we all see, you know, Mark Rashido bumping Dean Kemp, and you look at that, and it's brutal. But that was part of the course, you know, and Michael Voss running into Alan Richardson, all those huge hits were part of the game. In actual fact, that'd be the highlights package at the Brownlow Medal, you know, how many blokes could run through blokes. It was just the way the game was. We didn't know what we didn't know at that stage around concussion and some of those injuries. So, you know, so it's always, you know, I'm not trying to make excuses, but, you know, I played on the edge, and that one there was clearly, you know, stepping way over the edge of the line, but there was just a tougher and harder edge to the way footy was played. You know, that's a bit of context to it, I guess.
As we said, a bit of a spur of the moment thing, and it's not what you'll be remembered for, mate, especially in our eyes. Mate, we'll change tact a little bit. You stepped into the coaching box. How was that experience?
Yeah, it was really good. It was well before I was sort of ready or, you know, really had the tools to do it permanently. The whole idea was, for me, you know, Neil Craig had approached me after I'd been working in the media and was to come and sort of do a bit of an apprenticeship with Neil as an assistant coach. And if the time ever arose where that had success and they were sort of looking for a succession plan, that I sort of might be that person to take over. But as it happened, you know, pretty much 18 months into that sort of what we thought was going to be a 4 or 5 year journey, you know, Neil's message had fallen a bit flat and he decided he wanted to walk away. So, you know, I had 6 games to do that at the end of the year and really enjoyed it. It was quite a tumultuous period.
3-3, Bix. You had a winner first game, you win in a showdown. And there was one other thing. It's always bemused me, and that you moved Sean McKernan to centre-half back, and he succeeded at centre-half back. Why? That never happened again in Sean McKernan's career. Has me absolutely beat.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because you know, most people think it's easier to play in defence than it is in attack, and sometimes Sean did overthink it a bit. And I remember, once again, you know, sometimes necessity is the mother of all invention, and I think that day Ben Rutten might have pulled out with a virus, and so we just needed to find, you know, a big tall player to play in defence. And I think James Podsiadly was in really good form, so I think Sean played on James in that match, and like I said, did really well. And Geelong were a powerhouse at that stage. I think we only lost by not that much, so that was, you know, a really good performance that game. And then I think we might have went to Brisbane and won up in Brisbane, but then, you know, I was just saying it was a tumultuous period because the expansion teams were coming in, and Nathan Bock and Phil Davis, you know, they were being wooed away. Jack Gunston came in the box and said, "I don't want to be here anymore." You know, so there was a fair bit going on around the footy club. So whilst it was, you know, I was enjoying it, there was a whole heap of stuff that was going on behind the scenes, which made it really challenging. And then we're also telling players, you know, that they weren't going to be there next year. So unfortunately, you know, you think about coaching and all the good things. All the good things is around, you know, sort of winning and preparing for the season and all that. I didn't quite get all that, but I got some of the crappy stuff at the end, unfortunately, and, you know, telling blokes their careers over and, you know, and having to talk to players as they wanted to sort of go out the door. So in the end, loved the experience, but, you know, when you think about who was going to be the next coach, it was never going to be me, realistically, you know, on the back of, you know, a very short apprenticeship compared to someone like Brendan Sanderson, who had been at Geelong, and Geelong had been the best team in the competition by some margin, and he'd been sort of the right-hand man to Bomber Thompson. So that made a lot of sense, and I ended up staying around and you know, becoming really good friends with Brendan, and you know, that first year that that he coached was just outstanding. And, but for an amazing Hawthorn team, we end up a kick away from
and a couple of shocking umpiring. I'm waiting for the whistle for the 50 to Dangerfield. The umpire will get around to blowing that any second.
Yeah, well, in actual fact, Jeff Geeshan came and saw us the week after, and he apologised and said that was the worst umpired game. I think they do this thing, expected free kicks and missed free kicks, and we were minus 14. I think we were something unbelievable.
We got crucified.
And he said, well, but rest assured, don't worry, the umpires that umpired your game will definitely not be umpiring the grand final. I remember Brendan Sanderson saying, well, thanks, that doesn't help me a whole lot. That aside, unfortunately, the next couple of years didn't quite work out, and it was just a tumultuous period again with the Tippett affair, him leaving the club getting sanctioned, which forced our hand a little bit with Bernie Vince, try and trade someone with some currency to get back into the first round to get Matt Crouch, who we'd had an eye on. Then there was, Stephen Trigg was suspended, so we had the CEO, and then
Harper. Dean
Bailey became ill with the, in the pre-season of the following year, and unfortunately that ended tragically for everyone. So the only year that sort of Brenton we had his full sort of force of coaches and the full support of the club was they finished in the prelim, and the other years there was all this other stuff going on that he really wasn't really settled as a coach, and in the end it cost him, and they decided to look somewhere else.
Yeah, we really think of you. He's pretty unlucky, really. Now, Bix, you've certainly done a little bit of everything since footy, with your TV, radio, 7 years with Rowie. You probably deserve a medal for that as it is. Assistant coaching and all that. Just go through that side of things with a bit of everything. Yeah,
I've always sort of been involved in the media. Even when I was playing, I was sort of doing stuff on TV, and then when I finished, I ended up sort of reading the news on Channel 9. So after being sort of lured back into coaching, and then when Sando got the sack, I still had a year to go on contract, but I was just a little bit disillusioned because that year, I remember thinking there was 5 coaches sacked in the 1 year, and it was Billy McKenna, and I think it was Brendan McCartney from the Bulldogs, and then it was Sando, and it was one or two others. And I just sort of felt like I'd always had aspirations of being a senior coach one day, and I feel like, you know what, they're not really treating the coaches very well. And, what if I spend 7 or 8 years or 9 years and I move all around the country to become a senior coach, and then after 2 years, if it doesn't work, they just throw you on the scrap heap. So I was just sort of feeling a little bit disillusioned with that AFL coaching scene. And so, and an opportunity came. I was approached to do some stuff on AA, and I thought, you know what, when a great friend of mine, we were having this discussion around it, and it was assistant coaching is really taxing time-wise and stress and all that sort of stuff. And I was telling him, I want to really test myself as a senior coach. And he said, when's enough going to be enough? Then the minute you become a senior coach, you're going to want to keep doing it until you win a flag. And then when you win one, you'll want to do it another, At what stage do you put other things that are important in your life sort of first? And it was a really enlightening discussion. And he was right. And I sort of thought, forget about putting yourself first and trying to achieve what you want to do and making that the number one priority. Like, what about just doing something that enables you to lead a bit more of a balanced life? And it was a great decision, really. And that's what sort of being in the media does. You still go to the game, you still have an involvement, you're still doing something you love doing, but you're just not sort of flogging yourself, for 50, 60 hours a week and missing out on sort of important times with family and friends. And that challenge is still as relevant today as it ever been. There's so many good people that are sort of moving out of the coaching industry, and it's one of the big challenges facing all AFL clubs at the moment. So worked on AA, done some TV on Fox Footy and all that, and really enjoy it. Sort of all care, no responsibility type stuff compared to coaching.
And at least it's given you still the chance to watch your kids on a Saturday morning and coaching Emmanuel, carry on Emmanuel. Have you enjoyed that, coaching Emmanuel?
Yeah, love it. I love it because I'm coaching the first 18 at the moment, and so you got 16 and 17 and 18-year-old boys who are, the school footy is great because a lot of them have spent 3 or 4 or 5 years playing together, and some of the good players are playing at SANFL level, and they enjoy that. But playing with your mates is something really special, and there's this sort of obviously this collegiality about it. There's the intercol and the rivalry and all those great things, and then you've got perhaps 4 or 5 guys right at the pointy end who hopefully you're going to be able to steer them and give them an opportunity to go as far as they can with their footy. And this year we had young Phoenix Foster get drafted to Geelong, which was
boy.
Yeah, and he's got some great attributes, and he's got some other areas that he really needs to work on as well. But doing some work with him this year and getting him some other specialist coaching, a guy called Peter McIntyre who played at the Crows in year one. He's been doing some work with our big tall players. Sam Jacobs comes out and does some work with our talls and our rucks as well. So getting some specialist coaching for those young guys particularly in the positions they play, you've seen him improve in leaps and bounds. So that's really helping steer that, playing a role in that and having that leadership position, through those first 2 years. And as much as anything, in the end, I think the criteria is around how you sort of shaped the game or impacted the game. And so, I'm not by any stretch thinking that, I'm better than 1,000 other players. Like I said, there's many that could be in before me, but I'm just, you just feel privileged, and I'm not going to argue with the people who selected that. So
I don't knock it though, Bix. Don't knock it though. Like I'll say, from an Ord perspective, I know it was 21 years where we tried to get Michael Taylor in. So hey, don't knock it, Bix.
No, I'm not. I'm just so grateful, and similarly with those other attributes, the Hall of Fame at the Adelaide Football Club and the life membership at the Adelaide Footy Club, it's a huge sense of belonging. It's as much as I'm so thankful to the South Adelaide Football Club for the opportunity they gave me. If someone says to me, which team do you attach yourself to? I'm an Adelaide Football Club person. Yeah. That's my team, because that's where I spent, close to 20 years, 13 as a player and 6 as a coach, I think it is. And so they're my team. That's who I feel like I belong to. And so, the relationships with the people that started the club, that have been stalwarts at the club, the fact that I feel welcome to walk into the place now, and Matthew Nix and his crew are doing great things, and invite their past players down there as often as we can. And so, that gives me great pride. And, and I love nothing better than walking down there with my 2 boys and we go and watch training, and people come up and say good day and shake their hands, and they feel like they're a part of something as well. So it's a really special feeling for me with the footy club.
5 kids too, Bix, so there's busy there.
Yeah, well, they love their footy, which is great.
Yes.
And yeah, like they're going to hopefully write their own story, and whatever level that gets them to, as long as they enjoy it, that's the main thing. So that's my message to them. And they're both very different, and who knows where it's going to take them.
Mate, you're certainly part of the patchwork quilt of the Adelaide Footy Club, and we've enjoyed having a bit of a chat to you tonight and taking a bit of a trip down memory lane. We'd be remiss not to promote, obviously, your new radio gig.
Yes, well, I'm teaming up with Jared Walsh. He's the only bloke busier than most at the moment. He's footy, he's the world game, football, he's the 36ers, he's cricket. I saw him doing some stuff with beach volleyball the other day. He's at a tour down under. He's Mr. Sport in South Australia, so him and I are doing breakfast on SEN. I'm kicking off on February the 14th, so we'll be looking forward to doing that. And it's once again, it's a privileged position to be in, where you get to talk about sport and take the pulse of the state sort of every morning. So really looking forward to doing that.
Fantastic. Mate, we have loved chatting to you. We will obviously be listening on SEN for some of those comments in the morning on the way to work. And Mark Bickley, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Greatly appreciated, Bix. Always enjoyed seeing you on a Saturday morning as well, and obviously speaking to you over the years on Double A.
No, I always appreciate the interest.
A quick one other point too I do want to add. It's always a bugbear of mine of the publicity which sports people get for the bad, things off the ground, and that show. It's very rarely do the footballers and sportsmen get mentioned for how much they do for the charity side of things. I'll be honest, I've contacted Bix a couple of times, bang, in straight away. A couple of fundraisers we've done. And that sort of thing should get far more publicity than what it does. I'm talking overall there, Mark.
No, look, you're right. And, most players give of their time generously and like so they most of them realise it is a privileged position and they grew up idolising people and so they sort of give back fairly well, and there are some that do it better than others, and recently, whether it's Boakey or Taylor Walker or Rory Sloane, there's just some amazing people, who use their profile in the right way. So, I think you're right. But in the end, that's the lot you take on when you're a footy player, and if you can give back and use that position well, that's something that's a privileged position to be in.
Mate, just quickly before we let you go, how do you think the Crows and Port will go this year?
I think Port will do better than Adelaide. I think they're towards the end of last year, they started to sort of hit their straps. I think that Lysette coming back in will help. I think Vaughan Francis and one of either Junior Rioli or
Fantasia.
Horacio Fantasia will give them, or both will give them a bit of bite. That small forward they probably lacked a little bit last year. So I think Port will be in the bottom half of the top 8. Mm-hmm. Adelaide, I'm not sure. It's really difficult to get a read on Adelaide. I think they certainly improved with bringing Rankin into the side. Where he plays is going to be interesting. They're talking midfield, but I think it's probably going to be more sort of Tom Papley midfield than Lachie Neale midfield, if you sort of get what I mean. And so there'll be some spurts in there. But I think you're going to want him close to goal because that's where he does it. That's where he's most dangerous. If he has 10 possessions and kicks 4 goals, sort of Charlie Cameron style, that's going to be much better than him being on the ball a bit than having 25 possessions, and not kicking any goals, because there's other players that can do that. So I still think his best footy will be, around the forward line, and that's where he's going to win games for you. So I think they're going to try and strike that balance. And I think some of the other younger players will improve, but in terms of pushing up into the 8, I'm just not sure they're there yet. And when you look at most of the sides in the top 8, I think they've all improved. Brisbane, Geelong, who else is up there? Sydney, a good young team that made the grand final. I think they'll also organically get better. And so I think Adelaide will improve. Yeah, Brisbane have done really well. But can Adelaide improve more than the top 8 teams, or in actual fact, the 13 teams that finished in front of them? So that's the challenge for Adelaide. And in my mind, there's 23 rounds. I think Adelaide will play 13 games in South Australia. So, that's a bit of a bonus for them as well. So you would think they win, between 8 and 12 games, I reckon. And if they win any less than that, they'd be really disappointed. And if they're in the top part of that, around 11 or 12, I think that's probably where they'll be aiming. So they need to take another step forward, basically. They can't afford to mark time.
As always, the voice of reason, Bix.
Sorry?
As always, the voice of reason.
Yeah, so that's what I think it'll end.
No, I'd agree.
That's not saying that if things go well, they can't finish in the 8, but I just think the more likely outcome is that sort of 9, 10, 11 wins.
I still think I think they probably still lack a key defender. Bit short, probably. We're only average in ruck and lack probably still a bit of class in midfield.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, mate, we better let you get out of here. You've probably got 5 kids running around going, where have you been for the last hour? But, mate, thank you very much for your time.
Appreciate that, guys. See ya.
Greatly appreciate it, Bix.
All right.
Bye.